The development of a new Sith Lord for Star Wars Episode 2 involved a wide variety of iterations, especially since early concepts depicted the intriguing prospect of a female villain, much like the character of Darth Maul had during the pre-production phase for The Phantom Menace. Lucasfilm concept artists Ian McCaig and Dermot Power experimented with a number of different female Sith designs, including dark, regal queens, metal-plated cyborg warriors, and vampire-like witches. George Lucas suggested the idea of a shape-shifting female alien who could assume various different identities. Although the concept was rejected for Episode 2's new Sith nemesis, it was eventually developed into the chameleonic bounty hunter Zam Wesell. But Zam wasn't the only rejected female design for Dooku, which was eventually repurposed in the Star Wars universe. One of the earliest concepts for the character later resurfaced to help create the Clone Wars TV series fearsome Night Sister assassin Asajj Ventress.
Will not be my downfall.
It wasn't until George Lucas solidified his idea of a battle-scarred former Jedi warrior that the character of Dooku began to take shape. It was at this point that Lucas revealed to the design team that he was considering casting iconic British actor Sir Christopher Lee in the role. With that in mind, the design team scrapped their previous ideas for a female villain and developed concepts that echoed the stately, menacing demeanour of Christopher Lee's great colleague and friend, Peter Cushing. Lee had originally been offered the role of Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars, but he turned down the role in 1976, with Cushing cast in his place. Having joined the unfortunate list of actors who rejected a role in the original Star Wars films, Lee wasn't keen to repeat the mistake he'd made over 20 years previously. With the legendary Dracula actor cast in the role, the work of Lucasfilm's art department became much easier. The shape of Dooku's lightsaber with its arabesque curved handle originated from earlier concepts for Sith villains and villainesses. Concept design supervisor Doug Chiang wanted to create something unique for Dooku and thought that a curved lightsaber based on a rapier with an Arabian flare would reflect an earlier, simpler time. The idea was that Count Dooku was an old-school fighter in his training, his clothing, his chosen weaponry, and his beliefs. His decision to leave the Jedi Order, and in doing so to flirt with the dark side of the Force, was intended to foreshadow the possibility of a Jedi betraying the Jedi Order to join the Sith, as Anakin would come to do in Episode 3. As for the character's name, Christopher Lee revealed in his autobiography that the name Dooku comes from the Japanese word for poison, doku. By coincidence, in Portuguese, Dooku has the obscene meaning from the ass or of the ass, so the Count's name was changed to Dooku in Brazil to avoid any unfortunate misunderstandings. Dooku's Sith moniker Darth Tyrannus comes from the ancient Greek word tyrannos, the root word for tyrant and tyranny, used to describe someone who ruled a domain after overthrowing the pre-existing government. The word's meaning was not particularly derogatory or unfavourable in ancient Greece, but over time, as democracy developed, it came to be associated with oppressors and autocrats. As for Dooku's vehicles, his Flint-Knot speeder was originally imagined as a Coruscant police bike, while his solar sailor was based on the closed-up wings of a water beetle. As Sir Christopher Lee was aged 78 when filming began on Attack of the Clones in the summer of 2000, most of Dooku's lightsaber sequences were portrayed by Carl Rowling, who would also go on to portray General Grievous in his action scenes in Episode 3. Rowling's head was digitally replaced with Lee's during post-production, and some of it was slightly obvious. Nevertheless, much of Lee's close-ups were used during his battle with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Lee later remarked that he was surprised how much of the duel was his own material. The scene where Count Dooku visits the captive Obi-Wan Kenobi and expresses regret over the death of his former Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn was not actually in the original shooting script. The sequence was shot during reshoots in early 2001 and was designed to deceive the audience into thinking that Dooku may not be an evil character after all. This new scene replaced two previous scenes discarded during post-production, where Count Dooku's true allegiance was clearly stated. The first was a brief meeting where Padme and Anakin meet him in a conference room and refuse an offer to join him. The second was their subsequent trial where they are sentenced to death, which would have led directly to the scenes in the execution arena in the film. Another deleted scene which didn't make it into the final cut between Obi-Wan and Jocasta Nu would have seen the librarian identify one of the busts in the Jedi archive as Count Dooku.
He was one of the most brilliant Jedi I've had the privilege of knowing.
The lightsaber battle between Yoda and Count Dooku was initially envisioned quite differently. Originally, Yoda was to enter and fight immediately with Count Dooku, but George Lucas added the conversation and fight with Force lightning and rock falls to add weight to their confrontation. There was also footage shot of Dooku using either Obi-Wan or Anakin's lightsaber in addition to his own against Yoda, but it too did not make it into the film. Lee and Rowling did all the maneuvers before ILM animated Yoda to match them. A small model of Yoda was also used in the scene. Given Lee's iconic role as Dracula, the crew added vampire fangs to Yoda as a practical joke.
I didn't think you'd do that to me, George. I really didn't.
Although Count Dooku is the main villain in Attack of the Clones and is even mentioned in its opening crawl, he does not actually make his first appearance until 76 minutes into the film. Added to that, in Revenge of the Sith, Count Dooku only speaks a total of 4 lines. A 5th line was cut from the film where Dooku admitted to Anakin that Tusken Raiders who kidnapped his mother Shmi Skywalker were paid to do so by him. Dooku had done this on orders from his master Darth Sidious. However, when Anakin overpowered Dooku and was urged to kill him by Sidious, Dooku realised Palpatine had never truly intended for him to be his apprentice and had been merely using him as a means to engineer the war as a placeholder for his true and intended apprentice Anakin. Despite his brutal execution in Revenge of the Sith, Dooku was to play a vital role in the future of Star Wars canon. In 2003's original Clone Wars cartoon, Corey Burton voiced Dooku as he trained General Grievous, recruited Asajj Ventress, and kidnapped Palpatine, leading directly into the events of Revenge of the Sith. Sir Christopher Lee reprised his role in 2008's Clone Wars movie alongside Anthony Daniels and Samuel L. Jackson, while Corey Burton returned for the subsequent TV series. Season 1 of the Clone Wars animated series saw a wide variety of battles and adventures between Dooku and Grievous as the lead antagonists as they attempt to recruit various planets to the Separatist cause and form a confederacy of independent systems. Failing this, later seasons saw Dooku turn to bounty hunters along with his acolyte Asajj Ventress to scheme against the Jedi. Eventually, Palpatine began to fear that Ventress had become too powerful and tasked Dooku with proving his loyalty by eliminating her. With Ventress defeated and abandoned, Dooku recruited Savage Opress, who too would eventually turn against him. This constant theme of betrayal running through Dooku's Clone War appearances were designed to foreshadow his own betrayal on board the Invisible Hand by Palpatine. Sir Christopher Lee died aged 93 on the 7th of June 2015, which just so happened to be the 63rd birthday of Liam Neeson, his off-screen Padawan. Sir Christopher held the record for the most screen credits of a living actor at an incredible 244, the record for the tallest actor in a leading role at 6'5", and still holds the record for the number of on-screen sword fights, including his 2 in Star Wars, at 17. I'll leave you with this, his last meeting with his best friend, Tarkin star Peter Cushing, who at the time was very ill.
Hello. You don't want it like that. You want it done.
Like that.